Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and I am so excited to be celebrating 10 years of meaningful conversations with you. As we step into our new primetime hour, it's such an honor to share this exciting new chapter with you. So whether you're starting your day out, headed to work, or listening from wherever you are, this hour is designed to bring you thoughtful dialogue, fresh insight, and inspiring stories so you can make every moment count. So thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive in. We're here today with special guest, Emilio Castilla, who's here to share with us his new Nautilus award-winning book, The Meritocracy Paradox, where talent management strategies go wrong and how to fix them. What if the very systems designed to reward talent and hard work were actually creating unfair outcomes, and most organizations don't even realize it? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Emilio Castilla is a professor of management and professor of work and organizational studies at the MIT Sloan School of Management. A global recognized scholar, author, and speaker, he studies how organizations shape careers, workplace outcomes, and organizational success. His work challenges conventional thinking about merit, fairness, opportunity, and performance, helping leaders build more effective and equitable organizations. So welcome to the show, Emilio Castilla.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I'm really excited to be in your show. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
Oh, that's a very good question, and I get this question all the time. I would probably say that there are really two aspirations here with this book. Professionally speaking, I've spent more than 2 decades now getting inside of real organizations and studying the way they make hiring and evaluation and reward decisions, right? Like the way they promote people. And as a result, I've been really fascinated by these kind of questions of how organizations and their leaders reward talent and performance, and what can we do to improve the way this is working, right? On a much more personal level, in case it's not obvious by talking to me, I came to the US from Europe in the 90s, and I was always very captivated by this idea of the American dream and the notion that talent and hard work is all you need in order to be able to succeed. It's such a fascinating operating principle for organizations. And without really realizing, back in the days, I started like to be reading and learning and later conducting research inside of organizations to really investigate to what extent this is the way organizations are managing the promise of meritocracy in the workplace. So really, my book is really the result of both journeys, and I really wanted to bring the decades of research, not only of my own but also of many other scholars that I admire, to leaders, to managers, to employees, to anyone interested in really understanding how careers and how opportunities are shaped today by organizations, by businesses, and institutions.
So, for folks that are new to the term meritocracy, what does that mean?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm definitely not the first one, the first person defining meritocracy, right? In fact, many people. One of the arguments that I make in my book is many people really have been using that term without really fully understanding what it really means. So for me, and this is actually something that is important to lay out earlier in the book, meritocracy refers to any social system. It could be a company, it could be a college, it could be a small business in which individuals are advanced, right? Either hired or promoted and or rewarded based on their abilities, their talents, their efforts, their contributions, rather than things that are typically are not related to talents like family background, wealth, demographic characteristics, social connections, right? And that's why, for me, also one of the things that I really want to tell the readers of the book is that for me, meritocracy for meritocracy to work, there have to be two important conditions that need to be fulfilled, right? The first one is that we need to really understand that meritocracy is going to be allowing, or sometimes even stresses the importance of inequality in the distribution of career outcomes, right? So there's going to be, not everybody's going to get hired, not everybody's going to get promoted, not everybody's going to be rewarded for their contributions based on depending on their performance, right? So we need to accept that inequality is going to exist, provided, right, that there are processes in place to make sure that merit is being used to do that. That's the first condition, right? The second one, and this is one that I think it's often forgotten in some of these kind of definitions of meritocracy. It's a condition that is very important, is that everybody should have a fair opportunity to be able to demonstrate that they have merits in order to really also have a successful career inside of organizations, right? So everybody should have a fair chance. And what this means to me is that organizations, which is the context that I'm really studying, should be, providing helpful resources so to their employees, to candidates that sometimes might be unequally distributed, so that everybody has an equal chance to succeed based on their merits, right? So this is why I think it's like a very powerful concept, right? Under which organizations should be operating, right? Let's try to really figure out what those merits are when we start really try to make decisions about the way we manage people in the workplace. And then let's also make sure that we allow individuals to have equal opportunities to apply those merits and to be successful in the workplace.
So, is there kind of a little bit of a divide between how modern organizations are implementing meritocracy, but at the same time, the idea of what it should be?
I think that one of the things that I discovered in some of my research projects where I interviewed leaders of organizations, managers, supervisors, is that it's a little bit what I was talking about. It's that people really have very different definitions of what meritocracy is and should be, right? We all agree that meritocracy, whether we use the term implicitly or explicitly, some of the things that I often say is this meritocratic ethos has to do with like finding the best talent, right, for organizations. People have very different definitions of what that is. And what that means is that in the way they define merit, in the way they implement meritocracy in their workplace with some of these processes that have to do with the management of people, they may be choosing particular practices that are ultimately delivering on what their definition of merit is, right? For me, again, like the ideal of meritocracy, and I think I want to believe that is the ideal of anyone who is really excited about fairness and is very excited about equal opportunity for all, has to do again with this idea that let's just make sure that we define merits and talents in a way that they're not bringing biases and inefficiencies into some of these processes. And also, let's make sure that the way we manage people in the workplace, processes that have to do with hiring and with promoting and with allocating rewards and budgets to people to be successful in their workplace, that they're actually everybody has an equal chance to succeed, right? That we're all given an opportunity to succeed the same way that you and I at some point someone really believed in us, and probably we didn't have like a track record, right? At some point someone saw potential and someone really decided that it's worth for Emilio, it's worth for Marianne to really get the training and see how they're going to be reacting to the training and whether they're going to take advantage of the training and then have like a fulfilling career, right? I think everybody should have that kind of chance. And I think that organizations should really aim for those kind of practices that allow to do that.
So, what role do performance evaluations, and everyone gets those, play in shaping careers and opportunities within organizations?
Well, performance evaluations are really among the most important managerial practices, in my opinion, inside of organizations, right? Think about it, right? From the moment that we meet anyone, especially in a work setting, one of the first things that we do is we start like really judging them. We start like really thinking about evaluating them. What are they doing here? Do they have the skills necessary to succeed here? How are they going to be reacting to some of the tasks that I'm assigning them? How good are they? How much are they going to contribute? It's just something that, in my opinion, it just happens all the time in the workplace. So if performance evaluations are essentially like an attempt to start like formalizing this process, right? And ideally, they help organizations assess the contributions, communicate expectations, provide feedback, and help employees improve, right? It goes back to this idea that good performance evaluations can actually really help individuals have a good opportunity to learn, to improve over time if they're not performing very well, but at the same time, if they're performing well, then great things should happen to them, professionally speaking. But their impact typically extends far beyond feedback, right? It influences promotions, increases of bonuses, leadership opportunities, all these things that are really important for us career-wise, right? So in that opinion, the performance evaluations are so consequential that, as I explained in my book, any small biases, any inaccuracies, any inefficiencies in the processes that are being introduced in the way we designed and implement some of these performance evaluations can accumulate over time and can actually have significant effects on the careers of individuals that can be non-meritocratic, that can be non-based on merit, non-based on factors that are really, really relevant for the success of our organizations, right? That are relevant to the contributions of the employees, but rather just based on, unfortunately, biases and stereotypes and social processes that can really interfere easily.
So, why is it so difficult to design and implement a true meritocracy in organizations and businesses?
I um, I think, I mean, I want to believe that a lot of these kind of practices that have to do with managing people in the workplace are just created with positive intentions, right? They're just really introduced to really help organizations to make good hiring decisions, to really also allocate resources that are very scarce that have to do with like the way employees are going to be performing in the workplace in a way that it's just kind of fair, right? But the challenge is that, organizations and people were very complex, right? Human judgment, incentives, social processes, a lot of things that researchers have studied for many, many years, biases in the workplace, all of it influences the way these kind of practices operate in reality, right? In my book, I refer, I like to use what I call like a car metaphor, right? It's like, like at the very beginning when you buy a car, right? The car typically works really great. It's just like the car is just supposed to work as it's supposed to work, right, over time. But then, as you start like driving the car more and more, throughout the seasons, here driving a car in Boston, as you can imagine, during the winter is very different as driving the car in the summer. And depending on who gets in the car or who doesn't get in the car and what kind of things you carry, things things start to break down, right? Things start to fail. And this is like basically like the thing that happens when it comes to management of people practices, right? That initially you introduce them with the best intentions, but over time we start like really they're being affected by all these social processes and biases. And that's why it's so difficult sometimes to ensure that they work efficiently, right? That they're actually really helping us accomplish what we want to accomplish.
I know you've done so much wonderful research for this book. When you were doing that, what did it reveal about the relationship between this merit-based system and workplace outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the joy of me as an academic and as a researcher. That is just really, I'm doing research of real organizations precisely to understand this kind of relationship, right, between what we call these merit-based systems and workplace outcomes. So one of the lessons from my research, right, is that these kind of talent management systems do not necessarily always lead to this kind of efficient or positive outcomes for everyone, right? So simply because they're nicely designed, they're not really going to be achieving some of these intended outcomes, right? And I think that the question is to what extent we're going to be really paying attention to this precisely to this relationship to ensure that what organizations are doing in the way they're building these merit-based systems are actually accomplishing some of these workplace outcomes that they so desired.
So, why did you name your book the Meritocracy Paradox? What does that mean?
That's the core. That's the core of the book, right? And it's the core of the book related to some of the things that I think I've already you've already brought up in some of the questions from me, right? Is that given how widespread these kind of meritocratic ideals are in organizations, not only in the United States but around the world? In my book, what I wanted to do is just to warn the readers about some important findings from my research and very relevant research also of other scholars that should be warnings for them to pay attention because there might be unintended consequences behind some of these meritocratic practices, right? Some of these warnings, right? I think like cluster together into what I like to call the meritocracy paradox, right? So first, for example, one of these warnings is that emphasizing meritocracy in the workplace, whether explicitly, right, by using words like meritocracy or fairness, or sometimes implicitly by stressing, let's hire the best, let's promote the most qualified, or let's look for the top talent, that emphasizing some of these words as the basis of hiring and making promotion decisions and pay decisions can sometimes paradoxically backfire on women, racial minorities, immigrants, right, and many other disadvantaged groups in the workplace, right? So that's one of those kind of warnings. Another one, just to give you another example, is that simply having HR processes or structures, or even having like an HR department, doesn't necessarily mean that, or doesn't necessarily translate automatically into guaranteeing fairness and guaranteeing that there is going to be meritocracy in the workplace in operation, right? And this is actually something that I also observed in many employers out there, right? That, well, we have all these structures in place, therefore that's going to be saving us and making us look more meritocratic. And that's not necessarily the case, right? And the last one that I think I'm going to bring to you and to your audience is that the meritocracy paradox component has this kind of like how surprising it is that sometimes there is very little agreement of what merit is, right? And in some of my work, we realize that even leaders and managers working inside of the same organization with the same kind of professional background and making hiring decisions and promotion decisions had very, very different definitions of what merit is, right? So all of this together, right? It's kind of like all these kind of warnings made me think. Let's just title the book "The Meritocracy Paradox," and see how organizations and how individuals can actually really react to it, right? And react to this. And I know that many of your listeners are not going to be surprised about some of these warnings. But many are indeed, right? And I think that regardless of this, I think the book is about to bring evidence, to bring science, to show through research and through very serious studies that each of these kind of warnings are supported by empirical evidence from studies of organizations and the way managers and individuals are making people related decisions.
So, with so many viewpoints and opinions about what merit is, how do they get to a place where it is more balanced and fair?
Well, I mean, this is like where practice, as we can all imagine, it's just difficult to implement, right? I mean, I think I think that one of the things that I recommend organizations do in order to avoid some of these meritocratic paradoxes that I talk about is just to really start thinking about defining merit more specifically, right? My book is about, one of the things that I say in my book is that merit is not simply discovered, it has to be defined, right? So organizations need to decide what they value, what they measure, and how they're going to be measuring it, and how some of these definitions of merit are going to then be used at the time of making decisions, right? This definition matters tremendously because, again, it determines who is recognized, who receives opportunities to work in particular type of projects, and who advances, right? So I also think that if organizations define merit too narrowly, they may be also be overlooking potential, and then maybe also overlooking this kind of like necessary condition that I was talking about earlier, that everybody should have an equal opportunity to really have a chance to work in organizations. If organizations are defining it too broad and too abstract, they may be opening the door for biases, for stereotypes to operate, right, and efficiencies to enter the process. So organizations and their leaders need to think very carefully about what they mean by merit and or merits. Try to really make sure that those merits as they use are really relevant for employment outcomes, that they're really validated, right? That they're actually using criteria in order to decide who to hire or not to hire, and try to really make sure that by not being too abstract, that they're actually really allowing some of these biases to operate. So one of the things that I like to say here as an example, right, um, is I often see organizations obsessed with like the best talent, right? Let's just find the best. In the search of the best, right? They just keep adding more and more criteria, right? Just to really go for that 1% of the individuals that maybe will be the best. But do they really need all that criteria? Do they need to all go for that one top percent, right? Or can we really say, what about looking for someone who's going to be really good at the work that they're going to be doing for our organization? Give them an opportunity to come to our organization and be proven that those very few merits that they had was enough to really be able for them to have a chance to be successful and to contribute to the success of the organization amazingly, right? That's a thing. It's like behind this kind of be very strategic in the way we're going to be defining merit, and we're going to be open to allow a merit to continue giving opportunities to all.
What practical steps can organizations take to improve their talent management systems?
So one of the things that I mean, I think it goes far. It goes back to some of the things that I mentioned, right? I think first organizations need to define merit clearly and thoughtfully, right? Such clarity and specificity is what's going to make organizations. It's going to make it easier for organizations to prevent biases and inefficiencies along the way. Second, one of the things that I also recommend is they should increase transparency around the processes and criteria concerning some of these hiring, promotion, compensation decisions. That transparency is what's going to allow key organizational members help diagnose and identify where they do have problems, right? So that they can actually really target them more efficiently. And third, there should be also responsibility. I think that organizations, particular, individuals inside of organizations, certain individuals should be responsible for justifying whether some of these processes are really working, right? If someone says that this candidate is not qualified, ask them to be specific as to why they think that's the case. Make them responsible for proving that some of these processes are working and are really helping bring qualified individuals into the organization. The same way for when they seem to be favoring a particular candidate, right? I want to hire the star. This is the best. This is the best person we can really possibly hire. Why is this person the best? Define it. Tell me. I want to understand. Because that kind of accountability, that responsibility together with the transparency can really, really help do that. Now, more at the more structural level, one of the things that I'm actually also proposing in my book, which is part of what I'm also have also been recommending organizations and companies do in their attempt to become more and more meritocratic and be more and more fair, is that they should be collecting and analyzing data regularly to identify patterns and potential problems that, behind the hiring, the promotions, the compensation decisions, right? Just to ensure that it's really functioning as intended, right? And I think that this has to do with organizations paying attention not only to the outcomes, but also how opportunities are being given to their employees, who receives mentorship, who gets stretch assignments, who gains visibility, and how, who receives a sponsorship along the way, right? So it's basically audit some of these systems regularly, use data to help you assess whether you're accomplishing what you're supposed to accomplish, and then focus on giving opportunity to everyone to have a successful career.
Emilio, what would you like readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
Oof. So this book, as we were talking at the very beginning, um, it feels very personal too, right? And the personal part of it has to do with um, um, all the things that I think I've seen benefiting me and benefiting many of my colleagues and many successful professionals out there. I really want the readers to really also acknowledge the importance of opportunity in the workplace, right? For everybody. So for leaders and managers who are already in situations of powerful situations, I hope the book encourages them to examine their organizations and find ways to ensure that their talent management strategies are working the way they're supposed to, and especially that they give opportunity to everybody, right? Um, One of the things that I've been also trying to encourage is I'm hoping that we can start shifting from what I call this kind of best talent mindset, right? Like let's look for the best talent, and instead move leaders and managers towards like an opportunity mindset. Let's give everybody an opportunity to succeed, right? For employees and the general readers, I just hope that the book helps them better understand how organizations actually work. I want people to recognize that simply because an organization is telling them that they're meritocratic or that they have all these processes in place to reward and advance the best, to question whether that's necessarily the case or not, right? To really look for evidence on whether that's the case or not, right? And I think that in that regard, I hope the book provides individuals with insights that is going to help them navigate their own careers more successfully, right? The book is filled with examples and frameworks for them to do so, and help them start really being smart in the way they think about labor markets and organizations. And then, I'm not realizing that the list is quite long. And then like the last thing is like I really hope the book inspires scholars and practitioners to continue and testing interventions and solutions that move us closer to that ideal of meritocracy that I was defining at the very beginning, right? My book is not an argument against meritocracy. It's an argument for making meritocracy work better for organizations, for individuals, and for society. So those are um, my ideals, hopes for this book out there.
Emilia, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
So the first thing that they could do is they can go to my website, www.emiliojcastilla.org. There you can just find a little bit of details about who I am and my book.
Emilio, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Marianne, it was wonderful. Talking to you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Since we're talking about opportunity, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be introduced to your audience, to talk about my research, and to get to know you a little bit better as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emilio. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your Nautilus award-winning book, The Meritocracy Paradox, where talent management strategies go wrong and how to fix them. Make sure to visit Emilio's website at emiliocastilla.org for more information on his work and to be part of his community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.